Welcome back. The tussle between the government and Supreme Court over Collegium system has intensified. To break this down for us, we're now joined by Dushyant Dave, senior advocate at the Supreme Court. Mr. Dave, thank you very much for joining us. Looking at the way things have been going, we've seen this becoming a major flashpoint between the judiciary and the government. Can there be any middle ground at this point?
I think the only middle ground can be if the Honorable Prime Minister intervenes and stops, the members of his party, including the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Vice President and Honorable Speaker, from attacking the judiciary the way they are doing. I mean, there is no other option, because I don't think these people are doing it on their own initiative. Prime Minister knows it, and his steady silence tells the country that perhaps this is with his blessings.
Right. Mr. Dave, even in the past, we'd seen this during the UPA as well. There was an attempt to amend the manner in which judges are appointed to the Supreme Court and different high courts in the country. Do you feel there needs to be some change? Somewhere the judiciary needs to hear the government when it says that there needs to be a government representative in the body which appoints judges to different courts in the country?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, in an ideal situation, I would have agreed with you that perhaps, the Collegium system needs to be, changed, because my own personal views were in the past that Collegium system was not very conducive to the Constitution. So, yes, it was my feeling at that point of time. But in today's circumstances, my own feeling is completely different, because one sees the kind of appointments that this government has been making in high positions, including constitutional offices. And if the government were to have any say, the kind of appointments they have made to these offices, if they were to start filling judiciary with that, it would cause immense, I would say, harm to the judiciary in the long run, to the administration of justice, and ultimately to the people of this country. So I think it's very difficult to really see what is going to be, the outcome. I feel that let the Collegium system go on, because we have now a Chief Justice who's there for 2 years' time, and that's a fairly long tenure. Perhaps he will try and, steer the ship in the right direction, and try and see that the appointments to the high courts and Supreme Court are made in a proper perspective, and as independently as they are expected to be.
Right. I would also like to ask you about the government's reaction. The Law Minister, Kiran Rijiju, said, and he expressed serious concern about the fact that secret inputs of RAW and the Intelligence Bureau and inputs of the government about recommended names were made public. What do you think? Could this worsen the tensions, the flashpoint between the Supreme Court and the government?
Well, I would like to ask the Honorable Law Minister that how is it that the government is using these agencies to, for characterization of outstanding citizens? How is it that the government is getting this, self-serving input from these agencies? Why doesn't government ask them? Because, I mean, I know of all these people, for example, whose information was had to be put by the Collegium in public domain. Each one of them is an outstanding lawyer. There is nothing wrong about them. And they are absolute, great Indians. They love this country. They have impeccable characters. They have great competence. There is no reason why they should have been discredited by these agencies by giving these bogus reports. So Mr. Rijiju should explain to the country how these reports are obtained. Are these agencies giving tailor-made reports to the government? So I think, I'm sure Collegium was under great pressure not to, go public like this, but it was left with no option. Because if you give this kind of false reports about individuals and try and block them, the country must know that these reports are definitely tailor-made. So I think government will have to really backtrack on this. I really wish, because Prime Minister is a very respectable leader. He enjoys immense popularity. He is a very wise man. He should intervene and stop his ministers from, this kind of slinging match, saying that judges don't go to elections, nobody judges them and all that. What is all this nonsense going on? If the judges were to be elected, I think we'll see what politics is today. I mean, our judges will become like that. We don't want our judges. They have to be selected because election brings in all kinds of ills which we are seeing today in public life. So I think it's really sad the way the minister is going about.
Mr. Dave, is the judicial community, even among the judges, is there a division on the collegium system? We saw Justice Sodhi going on record to say that the Supreme Court is hijacking the Constitution and the collegium system is arbitrary.
Look, there is today unanimous support for the judiciary. I was myself once upon a time a strong critic of the collegium system. I have argued that when the NJSC case was heard. But today's situation has changed. In last 7-8 years, the kind of appointments that have been made, in various constitutional offices, and I must say also sadly within judiciary, because collegium after collegium were, I would say compromised because of weak chief justices who were, who really government had some hold on each one of them. And they really ensured that some very questionable appointments were made while making some outstanding appointments. So, I mean, I feel that today, everybody who was critical of collegium system would perhaps think many a times before saying that government should have any role in appointing High Court and Supreme Court judges. Don't forget that most of these judges who are appointed to High Court and Supreme Court end up spending at least 15 to 20 years in judiciary. And if we are going to have questionable people appointed for 15 to 20 years, I think it will destroy very independence of judiciary, the administration of justice, the rule of law, and constitution all will fail.
Right. My final question, Mr. Dave, what do you think now is the best way out? We've seen the Supreme Court again reiterating names of 20 judges, then giving very detailed observations, detailed recommendations to justify the decision for each judge. What do you think could this standoff really lead to? What is the best way out for the future? Because it was the UPA earlier, then you had the BJP, then there might be another government in future which may again push for changing the collegium system. So what is the best way out?
I'm not sure what is the best way out. Frankly, our body politic, our public life has suffered so much that it is very difficult to find now clear-cut answers. To have good appointments in any institution, especially constitutional positions. So you have to go with what is the best in the circumstances, and the best in the circumstances today appears to be the collegium system. So I really hope and I pray that wisdom dawns on the government, and government sits down with the judiciary to iron this out. Understand what the viewpoint of the Chief Justice and his colleagues in the Collegium is. And because, see, none of these names, I can understand if any one of the names that is being reiterated is questionable. We all know within judiciary, and you can cross-check with large number of lawyers who are regularly practicing in various courts, that each of these names that Collegium has recommended are of people with outstanding ability, with very large practice. These are the people who want to sacrifice for the country. They want to give up their, practice with large earnings and go and work for the country at a paltry sum of 1 or 2 lakhs of rupees which judges get. So why is it that, these people are not being appointed, with open hearts by the government, and rather government is trying to push them away? So I think government really doesn't want independent judiciary, doesn't want judges who are, very brilliant. That's very clear from government's approach.
All right, so let's wait and see what happens in the days to come. Mr. Dave, thank you very much for joining us here on Newscentre, weighing in on the tension we're seeing between the judiciary and the government over the collegium system. That's all we have on Newscentre. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.